So I'd like to go back a year, if I may, to the strikes that were brought by the lawyers and teachers in Anglophone Cameroon in October 2016. Describe what was at the heart, what lay behind those strikes, and what did both groups seek to achieve?
We started the strike. We started the strike action because, from the lawyers' perspective, because the lawyers were the ones who started the strike on the 11th of October. We started the strike action as a result of what we felt there was the marginalization in the judicial system. So we felt that there were certain things that government had to do to ensure that the constitution, which talks about the bicultural, bidual, and bilingual nature of our country, should be respected. Through that, it was the immediate cause was the fallout of the failure to have a translated version of the OHADA. But prior to that, in 2015, we had met in Bamenda. Bamenda is the capital of the Northwest region, which is situated in southern Cameroon, or West Cameroon, or Anglophone Cameroon, as we'll call it. We had a common law lawyers conference wherein we had tabled a memorandum to government where we asked for certain things. For example, a common law bench at the Supreme Court, a common law section at the NAM, to ensure that civil law trained magistrates should be redeployed to the civil law sectors part of the country, that's East Cameroon, and common law magistrates should be redeployed to the southwest and the northwest. We have already talked about a law school. These and many other things, and we talked about a federation. These and many other things were discussed during the 2015 Common Law Lawyers Conference in Bamenda. We followed it up with the 2016 conference in Boya, which reaffirmed the resolution of the Bamenda Declaration. And because of the apathy of government, because of government's failure to react, because of the fact that the Minister of Justice till date has never replied to us that he received the memo. I was part of the delegation that deposited the memo at the bar headquarters, one for the bar president and one for the Minister of Justice. We have acknowledgement of receipts. When they received it, they gave us an acknowledgement that they had received it, but till date, the minister has not written to us. The minister did not even attempt to try to address some of the issues that we raised. And after we started with a 3-day strike action, then moved to a week, and that's how it progressed until the 21st of November, when the teachers joined us in a strike action that paralyzed the schools and the courts in the entire southern Cameroon. That's a geographical entity called southern Cameroon. We decided to create a consortium when we felt that there was nobody in control. We felt that the consortium could bring everybody together so that we could have a chain of command where at least we could ensure that violence did not take place, ensure that people should not take advantage of the strike actions to settle personal scores. So that is how the Cameroon Anglophone Civil Society Consortium came into birth.
Now, underlying the specific issues that you wished to discuss and to alter in relation to the law and education, this issue, of course, has a much longer history. I wonder if you could summarise that and perhaps say the extent to which the issues that are being raised are to do with language, or the extent to which they're to do with more than that.
No, it goes beyond language. It's also a cultural issue. Language is part of it, but it's a cultural issue. We know the history of Cameroon. We know how the two peoples came together. We know how at Fumban it was a bazaar. There was not really an accord. It was a bazaar at Fumban. We know how President Aijo violated the agreements at Fumban. We know how President Biya had to change the name of the country in 1984 from United Republic of Cameroon to La République de Cameroon, a name which was used by French-speaking Cameroon prior to us coming together. So these are things that over the years, we know how the position of second in command used to be. There was a gentleman's agreement wherein constitutional provisions, wherein if the president was francophone, the next in command would be an anglophone. But these things were gradually eroded. Today, an Anglophone is fourth in their hierarchy because you have the president, you have the speaker of the Senate, the president of the Senate, you have the speaker of the National Assembly, and the prime minister, who is an Anglophone. So, and also the economic well-being of the people of the Southern Cameroons, the marketing board, the Cameroon Bank, the Power Cam. All these were companies and industries which were very vibrant as a result of us coming together. Something happened. I don't know what happened, but it's clear that all of them are dead. So we have been we've been left impoverished economically. Politically, we don't have any force, any weight in terms of the hierarchy, what is going on in the country. So, and also the perception that we are a second-class citizen in the country, the perception that we are not treated as Francophones are treated in Cameroon. All these things have gathered momentum in the people, and the people decided to react. But it's necessary at this junction to let you know that it's never been a struggle between Francophones and Anglophones. The average Anglophone likes a Francophone and vice versa. It's against the institution. It's true that when tempers flare, when emotions run riot, people might pick the others, like pick Francophones and vice versa. But it's not about that Francophone. I think it's the marginalization. I think it's the second class treatment. I think it's the fact that the government in place still considers the Anglophones like outsiders. I think it's the fact that the Anglophones are not fully integrated in the system. I'll give you an example. An average Anglophone lawyer can practice for 20 years without going to the Supreme Court in Yaoundé because it's completely alien to him. It's like a French-dominated environment. So these are things that our people are saying, no, enough is enough. When I went to the University of Yaoundé, when I read law, you could tell there were a few English lecturers, but majority of them were French. Even the English lecturers, they would teach and summarize in French, but most of the French lecturers would just teach in French. A course like constitutional law, civil law, would just teach in French without even trying to summarize in English. So we have issues that can be addressed as a family. We have issues that we can sit on the table and address, but there needs to be a constitutional reform. Because the problem is also constitutional. There needs to be a constitutional reform. A constitutional reform wherein we would have a federal structure, we will have a rotational presidency, and we would have the position of vice president enshrined in the constitution, and also constitutional provisions and guarantees, about not just the bilingual, bicultural nature, but to enshrine it in such a way that all laws will be passed in English and French, must be passed in English and French. Before we ratify a treaty, it should be clear that it should be English and French. These are things that would help to make the Anglophones, or West Cameroonians, or Southern Cameroonians, I would call them, feel that they are part of the country.
Going back to the events of 12 months ago, after the strikes, there was something in the nature of a dialogue. But then at the end of the year, you and other leaders within the Anglophone community were arrested and put into jail and only released on the 30th of August 2017 this year. Was it a surprise that you were jailed?
Well, we started having talks with government. They had talks with the teachers and the lawyers, two separate talks, where we had insisted that because the problem had gone beyond just that of teachers and lawyers, we felt that they could talk with the civil society organization representing the entire Anglophones, because it wasn't just only teachers and lawyers, the problems that the other sectors, the business sectors, others faced. But the government decided to talk to teachers and lawyers. But because there was no progress, most people blame the intransigent or our intransigent. No, it wasn't like that. I think we were talking to government. We wanted a solution. But also government had its own agenda. At times they come to a meeting they were not ready to concede certain demands that we made. I remember that we asked for the release of 21 young Anglophones who were detained, and government could not give us any guarantees that they will be detained, they will be released. And our people they were putting pressure. They were also asking. When the meetings failed, we were still trying to find a solution. It's not like we just didn't want to see progress. I mean, we were still, I was speaking to Mr. Tassan, who was the Director of Programs of the consortium and the Secretary General of CATU, and also with Dr. Fontaine, who was in charge of SINES, the Secretary General of SINES, and also the Secretary General of the consortium. We're finding a solution. It failed, but we were still thinking that we would talk to government. Unfortunately for the country, on the 17th of January, we arrested, the internet was gone. Did I think? Yes, I had a feeling that because the meetings had failed, and they wanted to show to the world that it was as a result of our intransigence, I had a feeling that they would arrest us, and I was informed the day I was going to be arrested that we would be arrested. But it's because we believe in what we were doing, because we felt that we were not out to destabilize the state. We knew that we were representing our people, we were fighting for the interests of our people. We wanted our voices to be heard, we wanted the voices of our people to be heard. I think it was a price worth paying. And if they were to rewind the hands of the clock, I think we would be ready to still pay the price, insofar as we know that we are fighting for our people and we're not breaking the laws of the country.
At the same time, the government instituted an internet ban in the Anglophone regions that was to last 93 days, and the crisis has continued. Could you say what the cost of such things is? Not just the internet ban, but also what is de facto emergency regulations. This must be exacting a considerable cost on economies and people's lives.
That was what we was calling international or collective punishment against the people of the southern Cameroons, because you cannot cut internet in the entire southwest and northwest region. So you were collectively punishing each and everyone who was in that geographical zone during the period of 93 days. Buea, the capital of the southwest region, is the Silicon Mountain of Cameroon. So you can imagine the economic impact of not having internet for 93 days in the southwest region. The economic impact on the economy. These were businesses which were run by young people who employ others, who parents, who have families to support. It was enormous. It was enormous in the entire region, and it showed a kind of a discriminatory policy. Because I don't think that if it had happened in Douala, they would have cut off internet for 93 days. But it happened in the southwest and the northwest, and internet was cut. And not only that, internet was just cut off. I think it's yesterday that we had internet back. They reduced the bandwidth. Social media wasn't working, unless you had to download VPN. So the people that are still being punished collectively, the government doesn't really care about the economic impact. The government doesn't really care about the welfare and the well-being of the people, because it has a huge economic impact. It's like a state of emergency. If you walk around, you see what is happening, you actually say, why this heavy-handedness in a problem which can be solved by dialogue? So it has a huge economic impact on our people. And when you talk to the small business people, even the big ones, everybody's complaining about the dire economic consequences as a result of the internet ban, as a result of the state of emergency, and as a result of the high military presence in the region.
Towards the end of September 2017, and right at the beginning of October, the crisis took another turn for the worse, and in the most recent crisis group report dated 19th of October 2017, they have referred to, and I quote, the murderous repression of secessionist groups. Could you comment on the way that the crisis has been handled on the part of the security forces, and also because these latest protests were by secessionist groups as opposed to by specific professions, like a year ago, the lawyers and the teachers. Could you also say something about the way in which the crisis has evolved or changed shape?
I think there's been a lot of heavy high-handedness on the part of the military. I think that they would have managed the crowd control in a different and more professional manner. I think that it's unfortunate with the loss of lives. Lots of people have died. I think also that there's a problem with the number of people who were arrested and detained. The looting, the breaking of houses, the torture, physical and emotional. It's unfortunate. I think the military would have avoided it, because whether you call them secessionists, I call them restorationists, or those who clamor for independence, all of them are Cameroonians for the time being. All of them are part of Cameroon, and I don't see why you would have live bullets. You could have rubber bullets. Most of these protesters were unarmed civilians. Some of them just had but leaves, some of them had but flowers. So I don't see why there's no justification for them being shot. Yes, the whole struggle has been transformed, especially after the 17th of January with our arrest, where most people prior to that were talking about the demands, the professional demands, and to a lesser extent talking about federation. But now it's moved with some clamoring for independence. I still believe that the situation has not gone out of hand. I still believe that we can find a solution. I believe that if we have an all-inclusive dialogue where all the groupings, all the various shades of opinion are brought on a table, we could find a solution. Because what we are having now is very serious. We have about 1,000 people, young men, children, who are in detention. We have lots of them who are wounded, and I think we need to avoid the situation. So I call for both parties, both groups, to exercise restraint. I call for on those who are clamoring for independence also to exercise some restraint. We need to, because at the end of the day, when people are arrested, it's those who are on the ground who need to ensure that they are released. I'll give you a recent example where, in my capacity as the president of the Faco Lawyers Association, we created a task force to defend those who have been arrested. As of last week, the report we had close to 200 who had been released from detention through bail or just through being released. So it's an enormous task on the lawyers, because it's a pro bono service, and at times they are in court till evening. And then those who are injured, we have to try to see, we find a way through our private contributions to ensure that we can provide some medical assistance, and also to assist families who are bereaved. So I think we don't need that. The country has gone through a lot. We need to, now there's a healing process. We need reconciliation. We need dialogue, so that at least we can move forward as a nation.
Some officials on the government side have claimed that the protests are purely political and are largely organised or fomented abroad, rather than having come about through feelings of marginalisation, etc. How would you respond to those allegations?
Well, I think man is a political animal, so everything we do, politics is involved, because the politicians determine the way the country is grown. So I don't think it's anything wrong to say that they are politically motivated, because the whole country, it's about politics. Being controlled from abroad, it's not completely true. Yes, we have a lot of Cameroonians in the diaspora, Anglophones in the diaspora. Why are they also, many of them abroad, vis-a-vis the population of Anglophones? It's because of the fact that they felt they could not have a place. It's because of the marginalization that most of them who've gone abroad cannot come back. Also the fact that the Cameroonians abroad are being excluded in the political life of the country. We don't accept dual nationality. And these are people who want to come back, who want to invest, but the political structure, the political system doesn't give room for them. So it's not just about them, because at the end of the day, the people who go to the streets are people who are based in Cameroon. But I also would urge our brothers and sisters who are in the diaspora also to try to synergize with those back at home before making some of the decisions, because we feel that they are being ruled by remote control. You need to connect with the people back home, understand the problems, understand the realities before certain decisions are taken. I think that would help in the struggle. But if decisions are taken without consulting with those on the ground, there is a feeling by some people on the ground that people in the diaspora are trying to control them. I mean, personally, I don't think that is totally correct. We need the diaspora, just like those in the diaspora need those of us back home. I think both the diaspora and those back home can try to synergize to work towards having a better country also. It's not just about strike actions, but also in building a strong nation and a fruitful and a prosperous country.
Now, in terms of the constitution of Cameroon, the country is a decentralized unitary state. That's as provided for in the 1996 constitution. Do you agree with that?
No, it's not a decentralized. It's a unitary state with a monolithic mentality, a one-party kind of mentality. I describe it as a monolithic multi-partism. We still have the one-party mentality. You could tell from the recent banning of the Solidarity March in support of the Anglophones in Douala. If it was done by the ruling party, they on the 1st of October, they did a march in Douala. And nobody banned it. But when it's the people who are not of the ruling party, they are not ready to accept it. So we still have the monolithic mentality. It's a unitary state, not decentralized. The constitution that came into being in January 1996 they say it should be progressively implemented. We are talking about 21 years. We've not had the effective decentralization. We've not had the declaration of assets. We've not had the constitutional council. So these are things which are lacking. And in a way, the failure to implement the 1996 constitution contributed tremendously towards the crisis that started in October. I think if that constitution had been implemented, it would have helped. I'm not saying that it might have averted it, but it would have helped in solving some of the problems which are being raised. And I have the feeling that it's too little too late. Even with the decentralization, it's not enough because people have moved beyond the stage of just a decentralization within the context of the constitution, because federalism is also decentralization. So I'm talking about decentralization within the context of the 1996 constitution. We need to elect our governors. We need to have our regional assemblies. These are the things that we need to have. It's not sufficient just to elect a mayor. What is the role of a divisional officer? What is the role of a senior divisional officer? Why can't we do without them? Those are unnecessary bureaucratic red tapes in processing documents and files, in layers of violating the rights of people they don't contribute anything to the welfare and the well-being. They are only useful because we have a democratic dictatorship, as I'll call it. Because if we really have a genuine democracy in Cameroon, we don't need the DOs, we don't need the SDOs. We need elected mayors, we need regional governors, we need the regional council. They will play the role. In other countries, we see that they don't have divisional office. They call them chef-ter. Chef-ter is what? Chief of the land, owner of the land. Is that not a form? Only from the title, it's very oppressive. So I think we need to move beyond the stage of having a GO and an SDO and have elected officers. And how do we need to work? And we can only have them through going back to the drawing board and having a federal structure that would best address the issues faced by Cameroonians, not only Anglophones, the South, the North, the East, and the West. Each and every one should feel that the country caters for his or her needs, that the country takes into consideration his or her specificity. We're not just fighting for the Anglophone, we're fighting for a better Cameroon for everybody.
I've seen many reports about the crisis that conclude by calling for dialogue, inverted commas. Is dialogue actually a possibility between Anglophones and the government at the moment? Is the government open to this suggestion and willing to pursue discussions in good faith? Or is the whole issue even further complicated by the approach of another election in 2019?
I think we have like 3 stages of dialogue. I think the first thing to do is for us to have an Anglophone dialogue amongst the various leaders of the various movements, those who are involved in the struggle, for us to chart a common cause, for us to agree on what are realistic goals, what is achievable in the short, medium, and long term. We equally need to have, after that, we need to have now like a Constituent Assembly of the All Anglophone Conference 3. I had called it last year in November. I said an Anglophone Dialogue Forum should be convened, where Anglophones, after their leaders have met, to really try to, choose people who will represent them if there was to be a major dialogue. Then the dialogue now with the state, because it's a crisis that we know is an Anglophone crisis, which the president acknowledged it, a dialogue between the state and the Anglophones. That is very important. Then another dialogue would have to be the bigger dialogue in the country, because the problems we face as Anglophones or as a people, for us, we need a big picture of the Cameroonian problem. We would have to solve the problem also, to try to address issues that affect other facets of life in the country, so that we are not seen to be only interested in the problems that plagues and concerns Anglophone. But the big picture, just like what you said, is that people are positioning for 2018. Everybody is looking at 2018, and that might affect a genuine dialogue. But I think that to have the country as one, unity in diversity, it's more important to me than electioneering. Can we have a small truth and reconciliation commission, where we chart a new course, where we sit down and talk, which will lead to amendment of the Constitution. To me, that's more important than scheming and preparing just for a presidential election. That is more important than people only interested in power. That is more important than those who are in the government feeling that perhaps if they dialogue, perhaps if they accept to some of the demands, they will lose power. The country is bigger than each individual, and if everybody likes the country, then all of us should do what is right. All of us should do what is good for the country, not what is good for us as individuals, but for the collective or the general interest, for the general good of Cameroonians.
Does it complicate matters that the head of government is for substantial periods absent from the country, and the governmental system relies very heavily on his authority?
Yeah, I think we're taking judicial notice of the fact that we have an absentee landlord who would spend most of his time in Geneva, and unfortunately also that he wields absolute power. So whilst he's not around, there is complete inertia, nothing really happens. But of late, we don't know also in his absence who gave the instructions for the soldiers to shoot people. We don't really know who gave the instructions for people to be arrested. But I think that there is need for the statesmanship, there's need for his leadership. He's a father. By the end of his age, he's a grandfather. I think that he should assert his authority and put an end to what is going on. I think that he needs to address the nation. If possible, he goes to the southwest and the northwest regions to try to talk to his people. All of us are Cameroonians. Everybody's, he should try to find a permanent solution to this crisis. He should try to address the issue, and how he should seek advice from those who are not necessarily in his inner circle. They should not be from government. He should talk to people in the civil society. He should talk to the clergy. He should talk to opinion leaders. He should talk to some opposition leaders. And if possible, invite, and I say, first of all, he has to grant amnesty to those who are on exile, release those who are in jail, grant amnesty so that everybody can come back home, and we have a veritable dialogue that would usher in a new Cameroon. I think it's possible. Hope is not lost yet, and the president has what it takes to be able to address and find a permanent solution to this problem.
What would you say to interested international parties or regional parties? Again, one has seen calls for ECOWAS to intervene, and for the UN to intervene, and the African Union to intervene. And for France indeed to intervene. Can any outside party play a constructive role in ensuring that this crisis which, let's be absolutely clear, is a crisis, that it doesn't worsen?
Well, I mean, Cameroon is not part of the ECOWAS, so I don't see how ECOWAS would intervene. The UN, the AU, the African Union, yes, can intervene. I hope we don't mean military intervention. Yeah, because I think Cameroonians will not appreciate that. But I think that they have a role to play, because Cameroon is Africa in miniature, situated in the Central and West Africa, and Cameroon is like the hub in the Central Africa region. If Cameroon goes down, then the entire region, Chad, Gabon, Central Africa, which already has a problem, Equatorial Guinea, everybody goes down, even in the Gulf of Guinea. So it's an interest in the international community to try to put a bit of pressure on the government so that we can find a solution to the problem. The UN Secretary General, through his representative in the sub-region, Central Africa, in Gabon, had said that they could use their good offices to try to help in finding a solution to the problem. But I believe that, like Africans, we have a way also of solving our problem. I think the AU has a major role to play. I think the AU, through its good offices, can try to find a solution to the problem. I would rather see the AU intervening, in trying to find a solution, because I think that the problem is not helpful to anybody to have a crisis. Cameroonians, I think everybody is complaining, everybody is suffering, and we are a proud people. We have a very proud culture and a proud heritage. We would like this problem to be solved so that we can move towards building a prosperous nation, unity in diversity, respecting the cultural specificity, linguistic, religious background of each and every group and people and persons. And it will be helpful for us if a solution can be found. I urge the international community to put more pressure on the government so that they can find a solution. To also talk to the groupings calling for independence, to try to have realistic demands, because it's not just about government. The other groupings also should try to have realistic demands and to be ready to dialogue with the government so that we can find a long-lasting solution.